Welcome. Thanks everybody for coming. I don't know what you're doing here. You should be next door listening to Jack Bowen for sure. But I'm hoping that I can help you out with some great offensive stuff today. I think that the thing I'd really like to do is thank John Abdu. I know he's not in the room, and Drew Clute and Ian for including me. Drew gave me a phone call and asked me if I would do this. I actually didn't want to do it. I didn't really want to do it at all. Ian encouraged me to do it, and then my 14-year-old daughter that I'm currently coaching said, "Dad, I think you should really do this. You have a lot of information." And I said, I do have a lot of information, but I don't know that I want to take the time out of our weekend or our family life or a day off on a Sunday to go speak somewhere where I, just talk about water polo again. And that's not to be mean or rude. That's just, a situation where we're all water polo coaches, and every weekend you have is taken up by water polo. Every evening you have is taken up by water polo. But after talking to Ian and talking to my daughter and my family, they thought it would be a great idea if I did it. So, like any of us, how many of you have ever been in a tournament and received the tournament schedule and kind of your jaw dropped? You were like, oh my God, like how am I seated third, or how am I seated eighth, or what's my matchup here? Well, I got the summit presentation thing from Abdu, Mr. John Abdu, and I said, really? Like Krikorian speaking on the first day, the guy's won countless NCAA titles, men's and women's. He's won 2 gold medals in the Olympics. I'm like, that's a tough pull, right? That's rough. And then I saw Wade Gilbert, and I had to call another friend of mine, Connor, and I said, Wade Gilbert, what's going on? He goes, this guy's amazing. Have you read his book? And I said, no, actually I haven't. So I clicked on YouTube, and I watched a little bit of Wade Gilbert, and I was thinking, really? I'm going after the keynote? I mean, this guy does this for a living. And this is what he does. I mean, he talks to people, and he helps people for a living. I do it too, but in a different form. You can yell at a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old or even a future Olympian and get them to do something in the water, but to actually stand in a room and speak to people is a tough thing. So following him was rough, and then I looked who was my head-to-head matchup. I didn't realize they were going to match us up head-to-head. So right next door is Jack Bowen, and he's speaking, and I met Jack Bowen when he was just probably about 15 years old playing at Coronado High School when I was helping out down there with Coach Burgess and doing some stuff with Jack, and then watched him go from Coronado to Stanford, and Stanford to the national team, and the national team to the Menlo School as a philosophy professor and then an acclaimed author. He's written 5 books. I still don't know what you guys are doing here. You should go next door. This guy's amazing. Jack and I ran into each other in the lobby last night, and I said, I'm going to yours. And he goes, I'm going to yours. And I thought it was pretty funny. But standing up in front of a bunch of people and talking about water polo is not as hard as it is into to a situation of getting through to the people you're talking to. There's a lot of faces in this room. Some I just met, and some that I've coached against numerous times, and that already know what I run. I thought about what I would say and how I would get to you guys and get you on the same level that I was thinking about water polo, and give you a better understanding, hopefully, of what you're trying to do or accomplish with your teams in defining offense. We've all had the teams, that you got the one big strong girl, the one big strong guy that can get to 2 meters and set. You got a couple of fast kids that have no hands. You got a really athletic baseball kid that came out that throws the ball really hard, but they can't, egg beat, and so you're freaking out trying to teach them how to egg beat, because if they can learn how to egg beat, they can score you some goals. And water polo's changed so much recently is that more kids are starting in splash ball and at 10 and unders. So now your athletes are more developed in your high school programs, although you have some high school programs that are super underdeveloped and they don't know anything about water polo. So I'm going to try and talk to the whole spectrum of it and how you understand, creating offense with the teams that you do have. When they talked about creating offense or finding offense, the funny topic was getting buckets, going down and, oh my God, what can we do to get goals, and how do we get goals, and what do we do to get those? And the first thing that came to my mind was, we're not going to talk about defense in this room, we're going to talk about offense. I thought it was a little odd, because how do you play offense without playing great defense? I mean, realistically, I tell every team that I coach that you have to play great defense if you want to play great offense, because you're not going to have any push going to the offensive end. Then you've got to work on your speed, you've got to work on your aggressive behavior, and you have to put yourself in a situation where you can get into an attack as fast as possible. So how do you do that? You got to play defense. So playing defense in a situation of trying to create offensive opportunities allows you to put your team in positions to get out on counterattacks, right? Put yourself in a great position. I've taken the time with Ian's help to put up some videos for you guys, just of some different high-level water polo versus some basketball stuff versus a little bit of soccer stuff, just to get your juices flowing and figuring out, like, we don't have these athletes, and what can we do, when we don't have these athletes. So please. Inspirational stuff, like, where are you finding your draw to find offense for your teams? What are you using? What are your resources? We don't have a lot of resources within USA Water Polo. Unfortunately, there are some, but not as many as possible that you can find accessible to you every day. So where are you finding your inspirations for offense? I'm sure many of you remember this shot. If you don't, I feel bad. I actually saw the game live, not there at the arena, but on TV. And how many guys have Michael Jordan on their team? Not too many guys, right? Like, just not finding those kind of athletes. I don't know if anybody can name this guy in the water right here, but probably the best water polo player in the world ever, especially a guy since he's about my size. Anybody? Nobody? Coker? Estiarte, yeah. Look at the way he takes space. Look at the way he attacks the zone. I mean, just even watching Mia Hamm come down at an angle and Meg the goalie, just by having an understanding of where to be and how to get there and what to do. Anybody can name that player? Nobody? Nope. Kylie Nuschel, that was Kylie Nuschel. Just showing some different ways to create offense or find offense kind of around the center, to a back door, continuing to work solo by yourself, and get a shot off. This is a clip of J.J. Redick. Watch how much J.J. Redick works to find himself open, and watch how he uses his teammates to find himself open just to get a shot off. This is Candace Wiggins, played at Stanford and then in the WNBA, played at La Jolla Country Day High School in San Diego. Growing up, her dad used to play for the Padres. A little bit of Maggie Steffens. How do you do this without showing Maggie Steffens? And you're talking about the elite athlete in the world right now for our sport. And trying to find offense for her is easy, right? Just get her the ball in space and let her score. But, I mean, how many people actually have Maggie Steffens? But if you look back, Maggie Steffens wasn't Maggie Steffens until she became Maggie Steffens in the sense of being the athlete that she's become. So what do you do when you don't have these athletes? Where do you start? And for some coaches, like, that's an easy answer. I grew up playing water polo, so I can play water polo. I know how to play water polo. I can get into position. I can do these things. I think the next thing really is, since we're talking about counterattack to start with, you can pause that one. You can pause it. You can pause it. So in talking about it, I have to go back to coaching and coaching against some of you guys just recently, and what we're doing, whether it's women's or men's or boys or girls, is there's a lot of stuff in water polo I do appreciate and that I don't appreciate, and there's a lot of things and it's personal. It's how you want to coach it and what you perceive the game as, and what you perceive as across the room is the referees association meeting going on, or the referee certification, and how they're applying the rules or therefore not applying the rules. So counterattack is all about getting out onto offense, but how do you do that without great defense? Great defense means that we're playing in a press. In Orange County, a press is you can hold somebody with two hands as long as you want, for as long as you want, as hard as you want, without being called for an exclusion. Whereas in San Diego, if you reach out and touch anybody, it's an exclusion. I don't get to watch enough NorCal water polo in the high school setting, so I have no idea. But so things in counterattack, all-out press, restrictive in a situation of defense, it leads to counterattacks because you're controlling every position. And if you're controlling every position, then they can't play offense. Then you're going to get to go play offense really easily because they're going to be so over the fight with you that they're not going to put any energy to getting back. So you've already broken their will with your physicality, with the fact that you can't move the ball anywhere, so then quickly you can get out on your counterattack. Right? It's a simple form of just teaching physicality and playing to the referees to see what they will and will not call. That's the creation of offense. That's an immediate creation of offense no matter what. If you can teach your team to be physical, to be in position to put their base, whether it's horizontal or vertical, in a situation to get in the counterattack. The next is what I call the spear counter. I love the spear counter. Anybody understand what a spear counter is? Do we have any idea what I'm talking about when I talk about a spear counter? A spear counter is something that was probably alive way more recently and been gone away in about the last year or two. So it's where we're in a defensive situation and we're playing, off ball, and we see that where the ball is, the ball turns over with a bad shot, a steal, or a bad pass that leads to a turnover, and the defensive player going to offense turns and attacks the offensive player that's going back to defense, and you're creating a 2-on-1 situation in that counterattack immediately, which could lead to a 2-on-1, a 3-on-2. And I'll show you a video of it in just a second, a 4-on-3, a 5-on-4, and a 6-on-5. So I think Marty will appreciate this next two slides. But the first one is 2007 Junior Worlds. I actually got to coach this game, and we're playing against Italy in the quarters, trying to get to the semis for the first time in 30 years. And we have a gentleman that's crashing, steals the ball. We have a gentleman that's anticipating. He's out in his lane, and he's thinking for sure we're getting this ball, so he's leaving. So watch the explosivity, watch how quickly the ball gets out, and watch how he attacks the goal immediately. Down 1, 6:23 left in the fourth. So that's Anthony Artukovic on the steal. Leaving the X2 position is Jansen Wygo. Sorry for the grainy video. It's the best I could find. There's a quick outlet pass from Shayla Peen, and immediately Jansen just attacks the goal. You can pause it for a quick second. And in the situation, will that stay paused? You can't pause it? Can't pause it? Okay, so we'll just continue with this one. This is Griffin White against USC on a 6-on-5 counter. He kind of spear counters a little bit, goes back, helps on the crash, takes on the 2-meter player at the other end, obviously gets down the pool as fast as he can in proper space. It won't pause, will it? In the proper space of your 6-on-5 counter, every defender was occupied. Every defender had to defend an area of the pool as fast as they could, and they had to leave somebody open and leave some angle open. So Griffin attacked the 2-meter player on the transition, sort of a spear counter, not as much as I would like to have shown you, but came down, crashed, then attacked the defender, person becoming the defender, who was the offensive 2-meter player, countered all the way down because they couldn't catch up. They didn't rotate into defensive position fast enough, got the ball across, and if you saw, that was a really easy goal in a really big game. I mean, UCLA, USC are always big games. So in the creation of your counterattack opportunities, hopefully on a daily basis, because I will say this, and I don't like to use names, but I went to a Jovan Vavic practice probably in the year 2002 or 2003, and was getting thrown off the deck by his assistant coach, Pinta, because Pinta didn't know who I was, and I was friends with Jovan at the time. And I watched a counterattack practice that lasted probably 2.5 hours straight, just counterattack. First release, when the ball came out, and everything they were doing wrong in the first release, everything they were doing wrong in the downline pass, everything they were doing wrong in the reads to the cross pass or the next pass to the isolated entry. So I went back to my drawing board, and I said, what are things I have to work on based on what I just saw at a practice? And I thought, well, first of all, these girls are so well conditioned that they're getting up and down the pool so fast, but they're being pulled back so many times for what they're doing wrong. So it's like, I don't know what you're doing, but what you're doing is incorrect, so we're going to fix it. So he talked a ton about his conditioning when I talked to him after the practice and what they were doing. He talked a ton about his speed work. You don't have fast players all the time. Sometimes you have 1, 2, or 3 great swimmer kids or really fast kids or explosive kids, but you have to train the other ones to catch up to that. And if not, they have to be very great with their reaction time if you're not a fast swimmer. So you have to know where you're going and what you're doing. So you have an idea of when you're supposed to get down the pool and where you're supposed to go. How fast you're getting out of your defensive position into your offensive position, and how you can force the defense to actually play defense on you that would then inherently leave someone else open. I know for a lot of people that they spend most of their weeks on this because that's the first line of offense going into your counterattack. Again, defense is primary to your offense. Any counterattack that gets you down to offense, that puts you in a position of strike, is one that you want to put the defense in peril at all times. You want to put them on their heels and put them in a situation where they're always looking to recover. I don't know for most of you coaches, but for us, our recovery is usually always at X4. Worst possible angle, if that's not a left-handed player, that's where we're going to run our zone from anyway. So, and I see a lot of nodding in the room, but that's the reality of getting back on defense of where do you want them to be. So you want them to be at X4, but it still puts them in peril. If that other person learns how to drive through and there's a wrap and there's any kind of 2-on-1 and you're teaching your team the different reads and how to deliver in those reads and how to put the pass on the hand or in front wet or where it needs to go to bait the referee into calling an exclusion or a 5-meter, it's really, really well thought out and worked on. So the next part that people forget in counterattack is you got to work with your goalies. Sometimes you're blessed with goalies that can throw a ball from their goal literally just as they finish blocking it to the 2-meter line for a guy like Jansen or Griffin that is super fast and explosive. They could send the ball one time on the hand, no question. And I listened to, I guess he calls himself the doctor. I listened to Marcelo coach last year up at UCSD, the head coach at Michigan, and everything he said was on the hand. That's all he said. Every time there's a counterattack, he just said on the hand, on the hand, on the hand. And I watched his game probably in the entirety, and every ball was going onto a girl's hand. It was never wet. It was never lead. It was never out to safe area water. It was always on the hand. And then as I watched his game progress, it was on the hand to what's next. So the person was receiving and then looking to deliver immediately and to stay out of a press situation. Then you can attack on offense anywhere. Once the ball's down in your front court or in a situation where you can run an attack or have an idea where that attack's going to go, you can deliver the ball in your counterattack. But I think if you're not talking about it on a daily basis inside your practice or the form of your practice, then you're missing out on a great part of your offense and you're not getting what you want from your offense continually. It's tough. I mean, counterattack coaching is very difficult. The kids, get winded. They don't want to pay attention. They're not paying attention. And I know I'm speaking to different, club level coaches, college coaches, and high school coaches, but every group is different and the same. Focus is a big thing, and focus is a big thing in your transition. So getting the ball out from your goalie, being in the attack, and finding the right grouping or person to get the ball to. There's things like, I really believed in best available counter. It was something that when I worked on national team that I got kind of chided for from some of the upper echelon of USA water polo at the time, is like they didn't understand best available counter. And I said, well, I see it differently. Like there was a guy from the Saints 2 weeks ago in the football game, I forget his name, a wide receiver, and he targeted him like 12 times, he had 11 catches. So why would you stop throwing to that guy, right? So if I'm throwing the ball to Ian in a situation where he's quarterbacking our offense, I got to get the ball to Ian every time because it's our best chance to score because he's reading the pool well and he's attacking the defense and he's dissecting it. It's like having John Stockton as your point guard. It's like having Tom Brady as your quarterback. You got to put the ball in someone's hands that knows what to do with it. So counterattack-wise, getting down the pool, understanding spacing, understanding timing, understanding delivery, and teaching your kids or athletes on a constant over and over and over again is like base leg body balance. I call it track start. How are you receiving your pass? Where are you when you receive your pass? What is the defensive recognition that's going on at that time? Oh, they're in an attack towards me, like the ball's going to cross, the goalie slides, 2 people are coming to me, you should read the next free up person on your offense. Who's available? And not just as someone that's available, but someone that can strike and someone that can put the ball in the net. So counterattack, I think, is the first form of offense, and I didn't want to stand up here today without talking about counterattacking and getting in the half court. I think the fun part of it is getting in half court and now playing chess. I mean, it's one thing to teach physicality in the transition. It's one thing to teach positioning in the transition. It's one thing to teach the swimming or the conditioning, for purpose. But I think most of us get in a situation at the highest levels where it's not many counterattack goals. I mean, that was a junior world championship game. You saw Jansen score that goal. That's a USC-UCLA game where Griffin scored the goal. And these are big games. These are people that know how to play water polo that are trying to cover and trying to get back, but they're still making mistakes. And they're still creating opportunity with explosive behavior, with positioning, and with attack. So with that, we're going to try and move into front court offense. Do you have a system? So again, going back to Jack Bowen, he made fun of me when I called him up and said we were speaking at the same time, and this was a little bit of BS. Why am I going head-to-head with you? I want to hear you speak. And he goes, whatever, man. I don't need to hear you speak. I know you're just going to talk about the 21 pick. And then I said, okay, now that's it. I'm actually going to talk about the 21 pick. And I say that in regards to a situation where we were playing in Šibenik, Croatia, 2009 Junior Worlds, and not doing well. And I'll even go back to 2005 Mar del Plata, where we were playing some overmatched teams. We took 15, 16, 17-year-olds to Mar del Plata to play against 20-year-olds. And we were trying to figure out how we were going to beat these teams. And I thought, well, if I'm going to try and introduce this system with no practice, where I met a guy at the airport, I'm going to have to do this. And this is a true story. I met Spencer Warden at the airport, and he turned out to be an integral part of what we did with the junior team for about 4 years. But I said, we're going to have to run something, and we're going to have to run something really simple, or we're going to be in trouble. So I said, we're just going to run a 21 pick and look for an isolation to 2 meters at JW Krumpholz, and that's how it's going to work. Like, this is what we're going to do. So traditionally, a 21 pick is something I learned when I was 12. I mean, it's a pretty simple form. If you watch J.J. Redick move around the screens up on the board, it's just a pick from the 2-player down to the 1-player. I don't know if you can quickly flip to the slide yet, but anyway, that's something I use as an offense personally for half court. We run a 21 pick to an isolated entry to a late 5 post-up. So when Ian gets to slide up to the 21 pick, it shows you what you're trying to accomplish. And this is a situation of, we need to attack. How are you going to attack? We need to attack the goal. What is your attack? So if you're going to a game and you're just going like, I'm just going to get the ball to Nikki. She shoots the ball so hard, she'll put it in the net every single time. A lot of pressure on Nikki. I mean, why are you getting her the ball? We're going to get the ball to Matthew every single time because this is what we're going to do for our offense. We're just going to use him. He's a great 2-meter man, great hands, and the ball has to land there so we can be successful. I defer on that because teams have great players and other teams can game plan for those players, and you have to have some structure. The structure being a 21 pick, obviously you need to occupy all defense. Obviously you need to be in a situation where you're taking on the X2 defender while the X1 defender is taking on the X1 defender in a situation where they're making the X1 defender believe that they're moving in to a strike position or a receive and catch and shoot position. While this is going on, you're hoping that your 4 spot, who's your quarterback, is a great pressure passer who reads the pool well. In the same situation, you're going to have to make sure that your 5 spot can occupy and your 3 spot knows how to occupy. Because if their defense is moving all the time, you're not going to get an isolated entry. So how do you do that? You do that by constantly moving and releasing and forcing your defender to believe that you're going to do something to attack their goal. So the 21 pick comes down and the 1 wraps off it, and you look to get a quick strike in that. You can get to the goal quickly, or you can get your isolated entry based on your spacing. Something I've been teaching for 20 years is about just basketball knowledge of spacing and passing. I mean, any form of offense that you run is all about spacing and passing. So within the 21 pick, you can incorporate many things. Strong left-handers, you can run a 45 pick. If your best shooter is Brittany Hayes, and you need to get Brittany Hayes open, then you're going to work for Brittany Hayes. She's a known scorer. She puts the ball away. She's not rattled in situations. So you're going to find someone who can drive on that side and then turn your quarterback to the other side. So it's a flip-flop of the 21 with the 45, but it's very similar. And you're in a situation where you know what your attack is, whereas kids go down there and you're like, I don't know, what were you doing, Christy? And she says, I don't know, what was I didn't know what I was supposed to do. We're running a 21 pick to a late 5 post-up, trying to isolate 2 meters. If that's not available, we're going to occupy defense and dump the ball and get back to protect on defense. But it's going to give us a situation where the officials have to make a decision on restriction in your drive. The referees have to make a decision on ball movement based on entry pass. So how quickly can you move the ball around the perimeter? How beautiful is that isolation entry off your 21 pick where the defender makes one mistake and gets excluded? In the simplest form, you know exactly what you're running when you get to your game, and you're not sitting there going like, well, Jack Coker's running this, so we're going to have to run this, or Karen Crawford's running this, so we're going to have to do this. It's a situation of knowing like we're going to work on what we work on every single day, and we're going to perfect it. One of the slides earlier was of the Princeton offense. I don't know if you saw it up there, but the Princeton offense is all predicated on picks and backdoor cuts and movement. I mean, constantly. So why can't you use that in water polo? So you should, and in its simplest form, I believe the 21 pick is the easiest one to use because your best players are usually your attackers. Your best players are the 2 fastest swimmers you ever had. One was a baseball player, one was a soccer player. They understand spacing, they understand catch and receive, and they understand where they can get themselves in position to strike because there's maybe in girls' games more than guys, 3 or 4 kids that actually will shoot the ball or want to shoot the ball. There's also a hierarchy on your teams within your offense of guys, of how many guys are really going to do it. I mean, if you look at box scores for baseball, you look at basketball box scores, or you look at football, who has the most receiving yards, who has the most touchdowns, who has the most rushing yards. There's always someone, and I didn't have it in the presentation, but really for me, that's the circle, triangle, and square. Like, what are you looking to stop? And then what do you actually have to work on your offense? You can go ahead. So it's in simple form. It just shows you going down, how to initiate the pick, the water you're looking for, the delivery of the ball. If you notice, it's inside the 5-meter line, but a lot of coaches nowadays use the 5-meter line as an offense. I'm disgusted by it. I think it's a horrible thing for our sport. The 3-point setup is really nice, but 5 meters is really close. It used to be 7 meters. There used to be a 2-pointer. And I mean, if you have a guy like Alex Bowen on your team, just for instance, and you're not matched up with any of those kind of athletes, but he can leg out to here, and he's so far above you, and he's looking down at a goal where he can shoot a penalty shot from after a foul with a lower-handed field blocker, or a situation where the field blocker can't get their hand up fast enough. It's one-on-one with the goalie, unless you can teach your players to be adept at getting up backline field blocks. So 21 pick to an isolated entry or a shot from your strike zone should be occupying all your defense on this side so you don't give up something in transition. Pretty simple form of water polo, not high level. It's not. It's something that anyone can run if you'll adopt it. I'm not telling you have to run it or should run it. I'm just telling you it's a really easy way to create offense for your team. And it's a settled offense. It's something where everyone is occupied and you know what you're going to get on defense. You can go ahead. Thanks. So 5 post-up is the second form of what am I going to do now? In the evolution of what I was trying to do as a coach, and this is, well, I started in 1983 coaching sports. So, 36 years ago. So in understanding the next form of, well, everyone knows we're running a 21 pick, so now what are we going to do? Because now they're just pressing 4, and we can't get our quarterback to be able to do anything with the ball. The ball's not moving, it's stuck. And because it's stuck, it doesn't matter, you're in 21 all day. If the referee's not calling restriction, it's going to be impossible to get anything off of it, right? So we added a 5 post-up, and I actually was in Spain training with a professional water polo team. I was not playing professionally water polo over there, but I was training with a professional team in Barceloneta, kind of following my buddy Dan Layson around, and there was a gentleman named Keem Colette, and I got to coach against Keem in Junior Worlds a couple times. He was a national team coach assistant, I think for 2 Olympics for Spain, but he was running this 5 post-up offense that I had never really seen before. I've seen a double post, Jeff Ehrlich back in Villa Park days, and the Doug Kimball time, and through the Pacelli brothers. Like it was a main focus for his offense. He would literally run a 2-man offense, and I got to see Jeff walking out last night. It was an awesome reunion for us. But he would run a double post, and which would put 4 guys back line, sort of in double triangles and put you in a situation. But the guy in Spain was running a 5 post up with a gentleman named Nelson, and Nelson was really good at getting the ball out of his hand quickly. He was a big, beefy guy, so it drew a lot of defense off 4. So what it does for your 21 pick with a late 5 post up, it puts him in a drop situation, hopefully. So now that there's no pressure on the ball, right, so you can't get counted at that position. If you're occupying at 3 and 2, and you should be at 2 if you're running a 21 pick, and you're not running it too far to the outside with an angle drive, then your 3 is a safety valve coming back, and your 4 is a safety valve coming back. But the offensive portion of it is, it puts you in a situation where you can actually attack with no pressure on the ball. So your quarterback now has the ball, and they can attack constantly because you've drawn them in. So let's just say you move a secondary center into your center position, and you move your primary to a 5 post up. Most coaches you coach against are pretty adept. They're not stupid. Number 12 now is posting at 5. Number 12, get our help from 4, get our help from 4. I mean, if you're not, then you should learn how to coach, and you should pay attention in seminars like this and say, like, this is the philosophy of what's going on and why people are doing these things, instead of getting to a game and then being frozen like a deer in headlights and saying, I have no idea what to do. It happens constantly. I mean, it happened in a situation for our 14-year coach at JO's last year where we couldn't get anything done, and we were going to lose to a team that I didn't think was at the same level as us, and I sort of took over at halftime and said, like, listen, we got to run a 5 post up. We're going to move our center to 5. We're going to move our best center to the 4 spot. And we're going to put ourselves in a situation down 1 where we could then get up 2 because the other team couldn't adjust fast enough, no matter how well they were trying to coach them in the game. So it happened to be me coaching against Ian, but that's a whole different story. So I think you can go to the next slide on that if you could. Right. So 5 post-up position, using it as a 45 pick into that post-up position. Your 2-meter player still has to occupy as much as possible because you don't want the X defender at 2 meters to come over and steal that pass as X1 comes over, and then they're leading into that counterattack. So how you steal, how you position at 2 meters as that post-up or as that center player, you must pin that defender behind you, and you must keep that defender occupied so they can't come over and steal this entry pass. You're trying to force X4 down to leave you in a quarterback situation. In that situation, you can run an angle drive attack here, not going too far past the 5-meter line, so you can use the 5-meter line as offense. And then also, you could run this into a pick on that side, but if you look at it in its rawest form, it's 2 different triangles, which add to, if I could draw lines on that board, which I can draw on my board later for you guys, is like, how are you creating triangles within the space of your strike zone, and you're gaining yourself a better attack? The object of the 21 pick to the 5 post-up is to occupy all defense, to give you a strike, and to give you an opportunity to control the tempo of the game so the other coach can't necessarily outcoach you with his press or with his zone. So reading the defense, having a plan to start with, having a system, and that's based on your 21 picks or your ISOs or your post-ups and forcing the defense to do things. How do you break zones? How do you deal with legal, illegal picks and screens in front of and around 2 meters? I mean, nowadays it's common practice. I mean, when I first saw it, it was something that Jovan Vavic did. I mean, full credit to Jovan in coming up with a play for an offensive player who was incredibly explosive that could go down and around 2 meters. But in rawest form for me, the first time I really saw it happen was in 1997, and Coronado High School was running it as an offense. They would drive right in front of 2 meters. The 2-meter player would clearly hold the defender going by, and they would catch and shoot right in front of the goal. And I was just aghast at the fact that the officials couldn't call that or see that. But for numerous times it happened, and it went. And it was the simplest form of offense. 1 driver in front, a little bit of a hold at 2 meters, a quarterback that's not pressed, that's be able to deliver the ball and shoot the ball. So, that goes back to the spear counter. Ed, I can slow down so you can write faster. I know, dude, but it's all going to be on video. You don't really have to do that. You can pick it up later. It's good. So the illegal picks and screens, and Klatt's sitting right behind you. I mean, he can help you with this later. It's fine, Klatt's here. You're good. So the illegal picks and screens in front of 2 meters. Now we showed one earlier, and it was an athlete named Jaden Calder playing for Vista. Dave Spence does a phenomenal job with his group, and he had a really great left-hander over the last 4 years that could do some amazing stuff in and around 2 meters. But there's things that you can do to create offense with 1 athlete and proper setup in your offensive end. If you can just train it in practice and actually see it in your mind, draw it out, and then try and watch it on video. You can video your practices. It's okay. You can stop and watch your practices on video and see what you're not doing, and then you can show your athletes on video what they're not doing and what you're seeing and how to help them move further and understand better what you're trying to accomplish in those. So breaking defenses with specific offenses, I'm big on terminology, and right or wrong, and I could be wrong, and maybe not egotistical or egotistical, I don't know. But I never heard anybody, say, we're looking for an isolated entry, we're looking for an isolated entry, we're looking for an isolated entry. And I stole it from basketball. My dad was a basketball coach. My little brother played basketball professionally. He's a half brother. He's 6'5", so don't think he was Spud Webb or anything. But bringing the term isolation or ISO, which now it's been years, and I walk on deck and I hear people say ISO all the time, and I'm dying of laughter. I was like, oh, cool. Like, I never heard that until I started saying it. But in isolations are what you're trying to do, and the next one was adjustment to the variables. Any coach that I've coached with in club or high school or through collegiate international team is the term adjustment to the variable wasn't really used. But how many variables do you see? I mean, I keep throwing Coker under the bus back there, but we played his team twice this year. And we both are on other ends of the pool, and I'd had a heart attack earlier in the year, so I wasn't really standing up, and I was kind of sitting behind Ian while he was coaching and talking about, like, well, this is what Jack's running, well, this is what we're going to need to run, and this is what he's trying to accomplish, so this is what we need to take away, and the understanding of how to get into those positions. So always adjusting the variables. Don't be afraid to switch your offense. Don't go into your game plan with it. We're going 21 pick to a late 5 post-up, but that's not working. It's not working. So you have to have something else, in your mind of what you're going to run and how you're going to adjust to those things constantly. I think that you guys that are writing this stuff down, this is going to be somewhere where you can get the slideshow as well, or you don't know, maybe? You're in charge. I don't know. Drew, what's the deal? They can get this stuff? All right, breaking an all-out press with practice, 21 or 45 pick to a late release for an ISO. Same as we just talked about, constantly driving in motion. I mean, to break a press defense, if you're not teaching your team how to drive or to break holds. There are games where I'm so frustrated that I walk away, and I've studied some martial arts and some Jing Shin and some things. My first coaching job ever was wrestling. I coached a junior high wrestling team in 1983. And really, it's like I always ask referees or other coaches, like, if you want this to be a fight, then please tell me, and I'll start coaching fighting, because water polo in its purest form should be movement, and everybody should be in movement. So what it says is constantly driving end in motion. If everyone's moving to occupy and everyone's putting themselves in a position to receive, then you're going to break any press because you're forcing the referee by painting a picture of being restricted and being held. Therefore, you can gain many man-up situations. I wasn't tasked with talking about man-up. Good for me that I wasn't. Our 6-on-5 is not great right now. And then it's like breaking the zone, preparing in practice, motion, going to positions you create, or forced adjustments by the defense. And how do you do this stuff? So if you go back to the Kylie Neuscher or the Manuel Estiarte slides, like the space that they took in those videos and how quickly they took the space. So receiving a pass, seeing a zone in front of you, and how quickly you attack the zone changes the zone. It changes the zone drastically because they're reacting to field blocks, so now they're becoming vertical. They're reacting in a situation where they're getting antsy about the ball, kind of like a dog chasing a ball. There's the ball, I got to go get it. So they're coming out of zone preparation where they've been told to stay and cover cage and or entry. They're leaving those situations and giving you isolated entries or situations of strike, because sometimes you receive in the zone and the defense retreats. So it's like something from a Phil Jackson book. You meet the Buddha in the lane, and what do? Like, what's your reaction to now this revelation? So the revelation is, I received the ball, and she retreated in her defensive position. Oh, my God. Why would I go backwards? I need to keep attacking that zone as fast as I can on my legs in a strike zone position, be aware of who's occupying defense, and strike and shoot the ball so I can score the ball. Teaching that's tough. Unless you have someone that's an automatic scorer that loves the ball all the time in their hand because they feel dominant, then you have to teach this in practice. This is done through repetition. This is done for throwing 5, 6, 7, 12, 15 balls. Like, we created these ball carts. I see them all over the place now. Again, something else, like I just put a rope through Noodles, and now people have PVC through their Noodles, and everywhere you go, they have ball carts and waters, and you're doing station work, and people are doing tons of it. I talked to Dan Cloud about his time at UCI back in the day with Ted Newland, and Ted Newland would put guys in front of the cage for 2 hours. And he'd make you shoot 300, 400, 500 sweep shots or step outs or backhands or rollouts or whatever he wanted you to do. And then he'd go into games and be like, well, this should be easy for you. This is what we work on. So the constant working on breaking zones, working on your outside shooting, taking space in the zones. How do you collapse the zone? You do that with ball movement. You do that with attack. You do that with constant instruction to your athletes about taking water and repositioning themselves into a situation where they can attack. And they are a good attacker, and they can put the ball away. And then you give them the reads. So what's the next read? defense coming at them. So you add that into your practice. Hey, now we're going to have an X3 defender split over and knock you down. Now we're going to have a situation where the X2 comes out to connect to you immediately, leaving 2 meters open, and we're rotating from 2S to 3S. But they're seeing it in practice. So you can do it in a form of having 4 kids at a cage and doing it within a group of 8 kids, and the other 8 kids are working on something else, breaking the zone from the right side or breaking the zone from the left side. Next thing was about how to occupy your defender with movement in the vertical attack and breaking a 3-man drop. So you can go to the next slide, I think. So what are the tools in your box? Like what do you have? Like what's really there? Like, so we watch Michael Jordan, JJ Redick, Mia Hamm, Kylie, Maggie, whatever, Estiarte. We don't all have those tools. I mean, if I were to ask Jack in scouting our team or Connor in scouting our team this year in high school, they got this big, gigantic lefty kid. Don't let him get the ball in space because he's going to light it. And if we're, on the opposite side, hey, I have this great outside shooter. That's a great foul outside 5 shooter. And what are we going to do with that? So, you need to occupy those people while you're playing defense and force them to play defense, right? So when you're attacking their best players, you need to attack them in a situation that puts them in peril. You do that with having these design plays. So if I have a right-handed player on the 2 spot at all times, and he's killing me, he scored like 3 or 4 goals. So they've scored a goal. He actually scored the goal, and you go into an after-goal play that drags him all the way across on defense. So we're occupying him at all times, and he can't switch off and stay on his side. They can't. Hey, it's like switch every screen in basketball. That's not necessarily, something you can do if it's run properly. So an after-goal play would be something that's in your toolbox, something that you can work on, something that you can take out of Lavelle Edwards' West Coast offense or take from Don Coryell's, Air Coryell. But you can find different plays and different crossing routes and different things that if you can't come up with them on your own on a dry erase board, and use them and put them in situations. You can run side picks and back picks, and you can run double crosses and things like that to put them in a situation of peril on defense. 1 or 2 dimensional plays can still be effective. I mean, there still is the video of Jaden Calder going in front of 2 meters, back around 2 meters, and it covers both 2 and 4 up there. 1 or 2 dimensional plays can be effective. Ball side drive to middle for a dominant hand player, righty or lefty, depending upon which side. That leading directly into a backdoor drive, which in the situation of referees, and I should have brought my whistle, is you're painting a picture to that referee of what's happening and what's going on. Well, they're restricting their holding. That first one's a kick out, or going backdoor, as you saw in the video, it was a kick out because the player made the defender constantly play defense on them the whole time. They couldn't stop playing defense because this guy would never stop moving. I mean, most teams have 1 or 2 Energizer bunnies on their team that will just go. Like, true, right? I mean, everybody has somebody that will just keep going. I mean, back in the day, we played SoCal Waxham, and it was a guy named Russell Simpkins. He ended up playing at UCLA, but what a load. I mean, Russell never stopped moving no matter what you did. The guy was like a 44, 4,500 free, maybe even faster, and he just went and went and went. So wherever Russell went, you had to defend him, because if you didn't defend him, he was going to kill you. He was going to get open, he was going to score, he was going to force 2 defenders on him, and then he was going to get a great catch and shoot situation for another player on his team. So you do most of this stuff by learning what's in your toolbox. And it says at the bottom, what wide receiver routes do you run? And that's going back to taking from other sports. And understanding that football does have a lot to offer water polo. We would love to have their national exposure, and we'd love to have their budget and their TV contract, but really athletically, what does it offer? It offers you an opportunity to see what routes they're running, to see how they're getting their receivers in position to receive a ball, or to be in position to actually, get that first down, or to get that conversion, from 3rd down to whatever, or from, 2 yards down to the touchdown. It gives you an opportunity to find the right player at the right time and puts you in a situation where you know where the ball goes next. Create purposeful plays for your teamwork and playbook. And I'm really sad I had a couple playbooks that were supposed to be laminated and done on Friday, and they weren't done, just so I could kind of show you the difference between a 1992 Sango Schwartz playbook that we put together for the first Speedo Cup in 93 in University of Illinois, Chicago. And it was it had the 45 pick and the 21 pick. It had all of our 6-on-5 plays. It had all of our after-goal plays, and it's something that was, found in my office just a few months ago, and I saw it again for the first time and hadn't really used it forever. And then the playbook that Ian put together for our Bishop's High School team, and one's like that thick, and one's like this thick. But the difference in the evolution of water polo from probably 1992 to now in 2019 has been immense. There are so many creative coaches now. There are so many great athletes. There's so many people that you've either played with or seen, or programs that you've seen use specific things. as their bread and butter. So how do you put that into fruition to what you're doing in practice every day? So you got to have a great playbook. You got to know your plays inside and out, and you have to be in a situation where you're able to teach these things. Like I talked to Ian a ton about doing this and standing up here and speaking, and Connor kind of made fun of it in the sense of like, you can tell anybody in a room anything you want, but if they can't go into a practice and actually initiate it as a coach or put themselves in a situation to teach it, then it doesn't matter. Because if you can't teach what you don't know, how are you going to teach it? So you'd have to immerse yourself in it. You'd have to become a student of it yourself, and then you'd have to play with it inside the framework of your practice. Listen, we're going to run this, and if it's unsuccessful, we have tons of athletes that play for us. Like, this sucks. This is stupid. Why are we doing this? This doesn't work. I don't know why you keep trying to make us run this play when it's not working. Well, that's your job as a coach that creates the play to make sure that you have all the variables covered into how this play is going to work for you. Putting the athletes in the right positions and then running the proper plays at the proper time against someone that's game planning against you. So make sure that when you're designing these plays, all your personnel knows it. Make sure it's purposeful and offers opportunities for adjustments, the defensive adjustments. Again, I go back to adjustment to the variable. I mean, think about it. If I'm coaching against, welcome Adam, if I'm coaching against Adam and he's reading what I'm doing as fast as possible and he's relaying that to his team, hey, listen, ladies, we've prepped for this. They're going to go 4:35:21. We got to make sure that we're not getting sucked back on this as the 4 goes across. Let's communicate at 2-meter guard if we can switch that and pay attention. Then you have to know the next variable. Okay, they're going to switch at 2-meter defense, so we're going to want a backside pick as a 12 coming from the other side, but we're going to bring the 3 all the way down to the 3 post, looking for a ball side drive, and we're going to try and catch them trying to play high zone on us and intercept the pass, and we're going to cut in front of them. Did I say that too fast? You guys catch that? Or some did, some didn't. But in the situation of that's how literally the mind of a maniac coach works, and how you're trying to create your game plan and your design and having to adjust to the variables in that situation. And I did hear something that Adam said. More coaching. One of my Shores coaches is here, and he's sitting in the room next door talking to or listening to Jack Bowen speak, and he said, so you don't have to joystick as much. I would love to not have to joystick. I would love for the ability to coach the highest level athletes in the world and not any way, shape, or form, in any kind of dig. It's like you're talking about and coaching your 12-year-old. I mean, you're talking about coaching your 10-year-old, or you're talking about coaching 1,400 girls for 20 straight years, or however long Ed's been doing it. But it's the same, and it's constant, and you have to teach people these things about what adjustments to make and how do they make them inside your game plans, inside the plays you're trying to design for them. Thanks, Ian. Okay, so Sherpa, funny name. I know it's funny, but you're in a room with a bunch of kids. Get that on your phone. Get that. I didn't want to do the talk because I didn't want to give out all my free stuff. Clat's cracking up back there. But like in thinking up stuff, Sherpa came to form in a sense of we couldn't break a zone. We couldn't shoot for anything, not for beans from outside. And we were playing a Coronado team that was really good at field blocking, had great base-like body balance for back in the late 90s. Their positioning in their zone was unbelievable. Couldn't shoot around their field blockers, couldn't get an isolated entry into 2 meters, and I couldn't figure it out. So the original play was called 4:35:21. That was pretty long for a guy named Colin Phillips. He was like, Coach, can we just call it Sherpa? And then he went into the diatribe of what a Sherpa was. I was like, Colin, I got it. I know what a Sherpa is. I've been to Machu Picchu. I've been to Peru. I know what's going on. So all the guys are like, yeah, Sherpa, call it Sherpa. So realistically, it's trying to break a 3-man zone. So in trying to break the 3-man zone, it's giving your team an opportunity to understand, like, we're just going to do our job. I don't have to think this through. I don't have to be a shooter here. I don't have to be an occupier here necessarily all the time, but I have a job to do now. So how are you going to run your Princeton offense? How are you going to run the double screens for J.J. Redick? How are you going to get someone open in that situation? Giving the ball to Michael Jordan to break Craig Elo's ankles and score the game-winning shot, cool. Like, not everyone has Michael Jordan. So how do you occupy defense? Okay, you do that with movement. So the first attack is from 4. You're going 4-to-1 as fast as possible. But as 4 is going, you want 3 to set up the X3 defender. As you set up the X3 defender, he tries to take the X3 and X4 defender in a situation where they now have to communicate, and they can cross signals. So you go 4-to-1, and then you're going 3-to-5. So you're looking for the outlet. But to start the play, the ball starts at your 2. So your 2, in many situations, would be your strongest shooter because they're your strongest attacker. So in the case of whatever team, I had a boys team a long time ago. I had a kid named Tyler Jemmet on it. He ended up going to UCLA. But Tyler could shoot the snot out of the ball. I mean, he could really bring the heat. Like, he could do a lot, and he had big hands, and no one could really take the ball from him on the perimeter. So this running Sherpa for Tyler was great because Tyler was a good athlete. He played a lot of baseball growing up. He could pass and he could shoot. So if they left him up there, he could do a lot of things with the ball. And back then it was foul outside 7, but I'm serious. I mean, the guy had a cannon. He could shoot the ball. I didn't say he was the greatest water polo player in the world, but he could shoot the snot out of a water polo ball. So it was designed where he could put the ball in his hand, and we could get action across 2 meters to try and draw X4 and X3 out of position to look for an isolated entry for Tyler if they had to come out to Tyler to protect the goal. Coming out to Tyler to protect the goal was pretty obvious if you scouted us, because you knew if you left him open, he's going to rain down on you. I mean, he's going to put the ball in the net. Coker's got a player like that now on his team that if you leave him open, he's putting the ball in the net. I mean, you can't leave the kid open. So now you got occupied at 3, occupied at 4. You're using 3 to go down and now occupy 5 and giving yourself another outlet on a downline pass, because if the ball's at 2, most 2-meter defenders are going to take away what? They're going to take away the isolated entry from 2, especially if they're running a frontside high or they're running high right on that and they're trying to get back out into a press if they can. So in that situation, you're going 4 to a 35, and as you're arriving from 4 to 1, your one is wrapping and then is going down for a pick, which is going to wind up that your 3 is moving over, check marking to point. So your 3 also has to be an adept at guarding 2 meters, because they could get rolled into 2 meters if your play doesn't work. So, I mean, Tyler guarded for us quite a bit, so it was really a natural thing for us to use that play. But it's really, how do you break a 3-man drop? So it was named Sherpa just because Colin Phillips wanted to name it Sherpa, but really it's just a 4:35:21, trying to create opportunities for a 5-side entry, trying to create opportunities at now, which is the 5-meter line. I mean, big difference, 5-meter line from 7-meter line, and then giving you a secondary thing inside your 21 pick, again, back to the 21 pick. So constantly moving, constantly occupying, and constantly trying to find yourself in a situation where you could be successful. So I think it shows it in its full form. And whatever it gives you, I mean, if the defense gets sucked out in that position, or the defense puts themselves in a position where they start communicating the switches, they may leave you an isolated entry. They may leave you a dive attack for a score from either position. They may leave you a short receive cross-face pass for a shot. They may leave you a catch and shoot. They may get tangled up on the cross drives, since there's 3 of them involved in it, or the pick that the referee engages with the whistle gives you an exclusion, because now they can't play their zone anymore. They actually have to guard players and talk about where players are moving. Create purposeful plays, be outside the box thinkers, be creative pattern things. You're going to use unconventional and non-conventional coaching brains from all sports. Don't be afraid to experiment. I find it funny that a lot of people, that I've coached against over the last 3 years have zero imagination. I find it really funny. Like, you're coaching a sport. Clearly you like sports. I mean, I'll use this guy's name. His name is Michael Meggs, and his sister was a phenomenal water polo player. She played at Princeton. But Mike Meggs was a senior in high school, and something came up, and it was like, dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun, and he looked at the guy next to him. He's like, what's that? And I said, what, Mike? What did you say? And he said, I don't understand. And I said, you never watch SportsCenter? Nope. I said, you ever watch ESPN? Nope. I said, you ever watch a full basketball game on TV? Nope. You ever watch a baseball game? Nope. You ever watch a football game? Nope. Why do you play sports, man? My parents wanted me to not be on the couch and be a band geek the whole time, so I played sports, right? So in a situation of a kid not knowing anything, everything was an experiment for him because he didn't know how to do anything. So constantly you're trying to figure out people that aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing inside the framework of their practices, to have imagination to grow their team and the threatening portion of their half-court offense. So there's years where I ran a 2-man offense in games because we're trying to win water polo games, and we're trying to shock teams that are 15 goals better than us and put yourselves in position to try and beat teams. So you have to have stuff in your playbook all the time, and you have to make up stuff that might be unconventional and might be stuff that you could use to be useful inside your toolbox by being creative in your thinking, different opportunities to do different things. The other thing is, when you're thinking of a play or you're coming up with something on your own, you have to think it through. Think the variables. See it as a defensive coach. See as it, what would he do as a defensive coordinator against this? What are the adjustments he's going to make so I can continue to make new adjustments or find us new openings? Make sure that you're thinking it through. Don't be afraid to sit and actually draw plays out and then take a picture of them, call one of your assistants, call somebody else run it by them. What do you think? What would happen if I ran this? What would happen if we ran this? And then some intelligent questions for you back to you would be like, I don't know, what's your personnel? What's your 2-meter player look like? What's your 2-meter defender look like? What does your outside shooting look like? Do you have any lefties on your team? How good is your secondary center? How are you creating plays that help your team do something that's not the norm so that they can't say, I've seen this all the time. I know he's going to run. He's going to run his lefty on a cross. I go to games and people tell me like, oh, whatever, Peabody's going to move his posts. No matter what your coach gets, Peabody's going to go moving triangle or moving triangle to a 2 out. They're going to move their posts. Cool, I'm moving my posts, but I'm moving my posts in so many different situations. Like, do you know what we're looking for or what we're attacking and how we're attacking? And I've seen it used so many different times since I started moving the posts. I didn't see anyone move the post for my whole life growing up. No one was like, oh, we're going to shift. We're going to come up from 3 posts down to 2 posts. And we're going to pop to a 2 out. It wasn't really happening in the 70s, not the 80s, and certainly not in the early 90s. It was not happening. People were pretty stationary. Go to your position. You step out at 3 posts. You attack forward on a 6 in to the 2 post. But how are you getting creative in your 6 on 5? And I know that's not what we're talking about, but that's part of what you're trying to think through and trying to get into your playbook. So different options within your plays. Then I came up with about 4 plays that I would show you that are just like the dumbest things in the world, right? Like this is crazy. Like where do you even come up with this? Why did you come up with it? How am I doing on time, Cloud? Am I going over on your time? Or? No. Watch me make a fool out of myself up here. That's all right. But in reality, I was in South America coaching a women's water polo team for 2 months. And we just left Peru and there was no water polo. And we had a 27-hour bus ride from Arica, Chile to Santiago, Chile. And I'm sitting there with a notebook I bought somewhere in Juliaca, Peru. And they had these cool little notebooks and I started drawing plays. And I started drawing plays like the double triangle or the stack or the Mongolian cluster. I can't tell you the next word, but in the sense of just like coming up with plays that people hadn't seen before that they would have to figure out how to defend and how would they defend these plays. So I think it's the next slide of. So stack offense was an idea of how do you get your best driver in space with them having to make an adjustment. So there's no way to do that at the same time, huh? What's that? Should we try and bounce back and forth? You want to just show it in its fullest form, see it in action for him? So in the stack, it's a singular drive from 2 angle, trying to get a one-on-one drive, and then trying to create new positions. So in stack, I just put 1 triangle where we were going to try and attack for a center that was posted up on the 5 spot, forcing the defense into a situation. And then I thought, okay, we have 2 really good drivers, 1 not so good, but they're a good occupier and a good swimmer. So we're going to put them in a line. You can't flip back to that slide, the first slide. Tough, huh? Okay, so in stack, what you're trying to do is you're trying to create one-on-one driving opportunities in a situation where you're putting them right at the 5-meter line. Your first attacker is just inside the 5-meter line, and they have all that space to roam. So some of you are sitting back there going, well, why don't they just drop a second defender? Why don't they take the defender that's guarding the highest point of this play and take them and drop them all the way back in so they can help? That's a good possibility. Anybody seen the wishbone offense in football? Right? So, okay, so you drop that defender all the way in, you pull your next offensive player up, and you run a block right in front of it. I've seen it done at national team games on the men's side numerous times, especially in the early 2000s, where guys would come around from 1 all the way behind 2 other guys. Those guys would both blast the cage, and he would step into a position of shoot, right, in a position of strike for a good outside shooter. In the rarest form, it's a one-on-one drive coming down from the 2 spot all the way down and going, protected on defense, trying to get the defense to make a new situation for you on offense. Then it's a secondary driver playing off the first driver, and then it's a tertiary driver playing off them. And how do you find open space in that? It forces the defense to be off balance and in a position of having to think and communicate all your different switches and where they could be looking for their shot from. Where you get your shot from, that's up to you. I mean, that's really up to you. You can design it for any way you want. You can design it as a disguise where the first player at the 2 spot goes, and then the third player goes, and you're just trying to draw your best shooter to the back line of the 5-meter line. You could have them go down and across. As long as you're occupied, you have a good shooter that can either dump the ball, shoot the ball well high, or score the ball, and then you can transition back to defense without being in peril or in a situation where you're giving up offense because you're playing bad offense. So it flashes through the stack. You've seen it run through a little bit. The last slide doesn't really give it proper as he's kind of crowding the water of the 2-meter player, but that next one would be a backdoor L out on that slide of creating space and occupying that defender towards the cage. Next slide. So 42 cross. Played in the CF championship game, had about 4 days to prepare for it, and there was no way we were going to beat the team we were playing against. They were just better than us. They were flat out better than us. Been in that situation many times in my life as a coach. So I had to come up with something on the fly watching all the video we were watching, and I thought that I would come up with we called it James Worthy, 42, famous Los Angeles Laker, and UNC Tar Heel. But so the 42 cross was a situation where we would just have the goalie hold the ball till there was about 15 seconds left on the shot clock, taking time off the clock so the other team couldn't play offense against us. I mean, the less time they had the ball, the less chance they had to score against us. So we'd run it with about 15 seconds, and we'd go 42 cross as fast as possible. We'd have two options to come up, whichever side the ball came to, whether it came to the right or left side. The cross up top would then happen, and we'd attack the strike zone as fast as possible. We had two really good athletes at that time. We had this girl, Dominique Sardo, and then we had this other athlete that could shoot the snot out of the ball from outside, Xenia. And we could run it for those two, and they would always find an open position to shoot the ball and give us opportunity. But we also knew in our movements that we were occupying their defense, and they couldn't counter us. And we took time off their clock. So 42 cross was something just out of necessity to give us a chance to try and win a CIF championship game. It put us in a situation where we actually were in position to win the game, and they should have been 5, 6, 8 goals better than us. I think we lost by 1 in the final. So, I mean, just it helped us in creating an opportunity for us to occupy as much defense as possible, take time off the clock, and give us some opportunity to strike. So in movement form, in position form, timing and spacing, and then when you go through. Realistically, it leads you into a lot of different things. You can go to double post out of it. You can get the angle ball side drive. If the ball's still at the wing, you can set then, if you're starting it at 20 seconds, post-to-post pick. Anybody understand? Like just like, it used to be called a 51-50 for the women's national team way back in the day. It was Sandy Nita's play. It was called 51-50, where the 2-meter player came out and picked the one spot. The one spot came around, and they rolled inside off the 2-meter player looking to just throw a dry pass to the post to see if the referee would actually engage in calling a 5-meter, 4-meter back then, and giving yourself a situation where you could actually score off that. So Mac truck, again, just watching football play is sort of a student body left or a student body right, in the sense of like, how do you draw the defense to one side of the pool and put yourself in a situation where you have your best passer, quarterback, pressure passer with the ball in their hand, and they can be in a situation where they can get themselves open. So depending upon where you put your drivers in the line of offensive players, on that side is the initial player is the top offensive player that has the arrow going through everyone. And you're doing this so the defense has to make decisions on who they're guarding, where they're going, and what they're doing. So the person that goes through the main line, I called it Mac truck because the girl or guy that I wanted to do it, I just wanted them to be the biggest, strongest, fastest player and just drive down the middle of the crowd as fast as you possibly can. So they're freaking out. They don't want to get hit with elbows. They don't want to get knocked out or knocked in the mouth. So you're opening them up to hopefully get into a position to strike. So the first play when he goes by is trying to go ball side to see if they don't communicate it out, and they give you that free ball side and all that open water going. The next one, you probably want to put your top outside shooter, and I mean outside shooter, not close range shooter, outside shooter, in that position. So they're stepping back off that play, and they could get a great catch and shoot. This is something you can use with 10 seconds left in a game. This is something you can use with probably 8 seconds left in a game. Something you could use as an after goal play if you needed to use something to try and create a shot opportunity where you feel like you weren't getting any shot opportunities. The third player in line obviously goes ball side to the post, and the last player is a safety valve stepping back. Another shooter that might be adept at lobbing the ball, that might be adept at reading the outside situation of this person thinking it's a tie game and I'm going to leak out and go to offense. So this player receives the ball on this side. This person then all of a sudden realizes this person's high lane, flashes to the backside of it, and overpass to a cross pass or an easy shot. But again, back to your toolbox. And back to your explanation and back to your training of how do you teach kids how to do these things based on your imagination and what you're trying to run or accomplish. So immediately as ran, you see it looks like pretty much a crazy play, and defense is going to have to make decisions on who they're guarding and what they're doing, and you're going to get an opportunity to at least get the ball in a strike zone position. So Mongolian was bored on that bus ride. It was like, I don't understand why we have to stay in the traditional form of water polo at all times. Why do we have to run the 21 pick? Why do we have to run a 2-meter game? Why do we have to run a situation where we're not using it? We don't have any 2-meter players. You know, at the time I was going back to coach San Diego State women's team when I arrived back from South America after a couple of months. It's going to be my first opportunity to go coach that team. So in that situation, it was how can I run these cross picks in front of the goal that were non-convoluted and were an opportunity where there's a ton of open water for our strikers to get to the strike zone to actually try and score a ball. So just again, it's another cross pick on the opposite side. It's kind of a cluster where our defenses have to make certain decisions, and so do referees based on the restrictive behavior of when you're trying to drive through or get through those situations. So in its rarest form, it's a pick trying to go ball side. It's not there. Everyone kicks out. The two other people advance in front, and it's a ball trying to go ball side. We're stopping on the slide there, but it's really you're trying to vacate to the two posts to get that cross pass, overpass, or inside water pass for a quick inside turn. Okay, so the last part is like, be a thief, but don't steal. Imitate to create and find your path. Like, the idea is, when you're watching a water polo game, or, there's some great coaches in this room just looking around that are very creative, and they do things with inside the framework of water polo or water polo plays, and you watch it and it goes against you, and you explain it to your team that this is going to happen, but then you don't train your team to do it. And that is kind of weird to me, in the sense of, like, if Matthew runs a play constantly that's getting my defense in peril, why wouldn't I study that play? Why wouldn't I incorporate that play? And why wouldn't I see if that worked for our athletes? Why wouldn't that put us in a situation now we can flip it on him and actually use it against him? He's like, oh, I saw where he used, the Sherpa play against me, or I saw where he used Mac Truck against me, or I saw where he used Mongolian against me. It's really important that you pay attention to your surroundings, who you're coaching against, what you're trying to accomplish, and how you can use things that are successful for other programs. So be a thief. Take it. Imitate it. I mean, you're not supposed to steal anything in this world realistically that's tangible, but you can steal information. You can take information. You can borrow information, and you can use information at all times. I didn't really want to come here and stand here and give you everything I've known or created through water polo all these years, because I'm competitive, and I want to keep competing. As I tell Adam, I'm not hunting anymore, but I'm still competing. I'm not hunting anymore. And when I first started coaching, I was doing a lot of hunting. I felt like there was an old boy network in water polo, and I felt like they didn't share any information with anyone, and they didn't care because they just wanted to annihilate you, grind you into dust, and wanted you to quit coaching water polo or teaching your kids. That was the feeling I got. And I had that feeling probably for the first 10 years I coached water polo, that all the hierarchy of it, let's say in high school or in club form, nobody wanted you to understand the business model of what you're trying to do as a business in clubs. And I see a lot of people now running super successful water polo clubs that were not. Like, there's SoCal and Commerce basically when we started. And there's a few other like clubs that were around doing some stuff. Brent Bolander was doing some things up in Modesto, but so take great ideas. Take great ideas all the time from anyone that you're in contact with. Watch great coaches coach. Watch great players play, and utilize it to the best of your ability inside your framework of what you're doing. So develop ideas into actionable forecasting of what your offense is truly capable of, as well as understanding what teams and coaches will try and take away from what you were prepared for. Don't freeze. Adjust. Make adjustments. Thanks for listening to me today. I know it was long. The framework of the hour is tough because you don't know. I don't even know where I am, Drew, time-wise, but. So I do have a dry erase board up here, and Ian can flip the switch on it, Nick can come up here. You don't get to talk to everybody every day. There's some coaches in the room I talk to every day or every week, and I have great personal relationships with, and we bounce stuff off each other all the time. I get to be with Ian every day and talk water polo in our office nonstop and watch video, but it's in its crudest and rudest form. I know that Jack had said, how are we going to do it for his presentation, what's going on up here. And I thought this was an amazing tool. Ian described it as the old overhead projector when you were a kid. And they'd slide in the plastics, slides or whatever, and you could actually do it. Personally, I don't want to draw anything. I'm not really good at drawing. I look like I draw like a third grader or something. But if there are questions, if you have questions, if you'd like to talk through any plays that you have in your mind or that you're trying to run or that you may see that may work, I'm glad to talk it out with you. I don't know everything. I'm a learning, growing adult and or coach. So, want to go first?
Yeah, it's not a specific play, but how many plays do you have in a playbook given a specific age?
There's no reason not to have all your plays in your playbook, regardless of age. You don't necessarily have to teach that playbook, but if they're looking at it themselves, you may find a few athletes that join together quickly. So, like, let's just say for my son's team, he's playing in 1400s now, but he's got like 3 or 4 buddies, and they're just buddies. And when they're messing around, like I could see them messing around with like Mongolian or with the stack, and then coming back to their coach and saying like, I think we can do this, because they're pretty bright kids. So you may not have to give the information or teach the information, but if it's in the playbook, just like anybody else that's curious, they're going to read it, they're going to know about it, they're going to learn it, they're going to ask you about it. And then it becomes something that's alive and growing because it's already in there for them. So I wouldn't limit your playbook. You could limit your playbook on game day. You could limit your playbook on preparation for a tournament, but I wouldn't limit the information you give out, hence why we gave so much today. Yeah.
Great play. I appreciate you sharing that.
I'm in trouble now. I'm never going to get you.
How do do you practice that in practice? Do you actually go whole versus to the part or part to the whole? How do you implement the small movements in your practice plan to allow them to execute?
I work with someone who I have a different philosophy than and we butt heads some way in how we're doing things in breakdown. I believe in full go all the time and walking through it and then coming back through it, whereas Ian believes in great breakdown. And I'm learning a lot this year coaching with someone that I've coached with for a really long time that's coming back with a different format of how you do it. So incrementally, I think is best after you've shown it as a full form play. If you have someone that can run it correctly in front of you, we ran a bunch of these plays because we played lower level competition this week. So we ran Sherpa and Mongolian, but we did it without ever practicing it. So we just did it off a dry erase board. So now we actually have it on video. So now we can actually go down and break it down into the smallest form. So when you're going the 4-to-1, this is what the 4-to-1 look like. When you're going in the Sherpa, you're going 4-to-1 and the 3 down to 5, then you can add that. And then you can add the next form of 3 arriving at 5, and what 5 does is set up that. And you can do that in small increments in your practice. I mean, either way, I think that if they don't see it or feel it full go and you can't get it on video, especially now with what people are doing with video, then you know, you're kind of blowing that situation of like you have the opportunity to actually run it and then go back and break it down.
To that point in the breaking down, how much time are you planning out in practice for either whiteboard talk or film, like weekly, daily, to be able to show them those exemplars or talk through different plays that they're learning?
So the first question back to you would be like, how much is your practice time? So we're allowed 18 hours a week in high school now currently. I don't coach at a college, so I don't get the 20 hours supposedly a week, where colleges are going 35 hours or who knows. But the 20 hours a week thing for us is not a thing. So the 18 hours, so in the 18 hours, finding time inside your practice or inside your practice for the week or the month, it depends on your season as well and what you're trying to implement into your season. So for us, if we're trying to run a new play, I would say it gets 20 to 40 minutes based on something that we're going to break down and or run full go. And if it's 20 to 40 minutes, it's got to be at least 2 days a week, if not 3 days a week, so they can get the basic form of that play down. It seems like a lot of time, but if you've already done your practice planning and you've already done all your fundamental based or all your fundamental tactic based things, then you should have time to implement the plays 2 to 3 days a week. And you should be able to do that for 20 minutes.
And how often do you rotate different players through those different positions within those plays? Do you just have a set 2 or 3 that you're going to be this player in this play, this player in this play? Just for instance, because there's just not enough time to run.
It's a phenomenal question. So think back to the core. Realistically, like Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, Horace Grant, B.J. Armstrong, and Will Perdue. They're getting all the minutes. And they're running every part of the triangle offense. Luke Longley's not getting his time in front of Will Perdue, or Craig Hodges isn't getting his time in front of Scottie Pippen. So you're going to do it with your core group that's going to play the bulk minutes of what you're doing. Because if you don't do it with your core group that plays the bulk minutes and you're trying to incorporate your 13th, 14th, or 9th or 10th player into that play, you're going to run out of time to get that play implemented. Now, on the backside of that, you have to really instruct your players, like, I don't know what you're doing. Why weren't you paying attention? You know you're a 2-spot player. You just got done playing defense on the 2-spot. You know what the 2-spot's supposed to be doing, so you have to be able to go into that situation and run that from that position. So that's going to take some extra work on your part, pre-practice, post-practice, maybe a phone call on the way home from practice. Hey, I didn't really see you run that play well. I didn't feel like you understood the concept of it. Well, coach, I never get to run it in practice. It's always, Dougie that gets to run it. He's the only one that gets to run it. Well, were you not watching Dougie do it? Didn't he beat you to the inside 3 times? So when you're playing in that position, you have to understand how to beat that player to the inside position or deliver that pass. And that's done by stealing or imitating as much as possible. And you do that through communication. Communication is key.
How often are you meeting with your staff to go over the plays, cultivate new plays? Is it once a month, once a week?
Well, in a club situation, it's very difficult because we work out of different pools. We're strewn out all across the county, and we don't get to watch each other coach very often. So Dan and I have this running joke of like, I never get to see you work. And so I'm like, I never get to see you work. And so kind of that one's a tough one. In high school, different. I get to see the person I work with in high school every single day. We share an office. So I would make it a point to, if you're off-site from the people that you're working with and you have coaches off-site that you want to implement a playbook in your 12 and unders so you can use it at 16 and unders, I would make sure that you spent at least an hour a week with them, whether it's on the phone or in person. And an hour is a long time. I spend an hour in here with a lot of information, as long as it's concentrated information on what you're trying to accomplish. So I'd say probably at least an hour a week. If you can do it on a daily, for us, it's fantastic. We can bang stuff out really fast because we can just bounce it off each other quickly. Thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate it.